Hello again, welcome back inside the Tier 4 studio here in Morgantown, West Virginia for 24/7 Sports. I am Mike Casazza. Today is Friday, tomorrow is another West Virginia football game. That means this is the 4-minute offensive. Just a few minutes for just a few topics to help you get ready for when the Mountaineers travel to Lawrence, Kansas and play the Jayhawks to open Big 12 play. This is a curious game on the schedule. It's maybe the third straight lesser opponent for the Mountaineers. And I can tell you that in the offseason, there was concern in the Puskar Center about this game. One, it's not an easy place to go to. I know it sounds lame, but if you can imagine playing at 11 a.m. when it's going to be really hot out in front of a mostly empty stadium that is a relic to World War I, not World War II when you hear Memorial Stadium. It's not easy to conjure up that motivation, especially when you think you're going good on offense and you're playing a team that has been a doormat for years. That is exactly what Kansas has been. 3-24 under David Beatty as the head coach. Kansas hasn't been 1-0 in Big 12 play since 2009. This is supposed to be easy for West Virginia. Do the Mountaineers think that? Does that affect their play? Something to keep an eye on. Let's also watch the offensive line because there are whispers that maybe Jacob Buccigrassi and Grant Lingenfelter are back. That adds a center and a guard to the rotation. Maybe West Virginia can actually use 7 or 8, 9 people effectively and efficiently in the rotation, but also they're going to have their hands full against a very good front for the Kansas defense. Dorrance Armstrong, a destructive player at defensive end. Daniel Wise, a tackle for loss guy as a defensive tackle. Behind them, Joe Dineen, a guy who is top 10 in both tackles and tackles for a loss this season. You may not have heard a lot of him, but he's very good. He just played 3 games last season because of injury. They're all important, the offensive line and their defensive counterparts, because West Virginia wants to, get ready for this, force the run. You've heard that a couple of times this week in the season. What that means is West Virginia does not want to get in a situation where it reads the defense and then says, okay, there's 8 in the box, it's time to throw it, or there's 5 in the box, it's time to run it. That makes them predictable. They actually want to dictate to the offense. It's a bit of a flipped script from the past few seasons for West Virginia, but they like their line and their running game so much that it's important for them to play the game on their terms. That is more so important on the road. Also watch Kansas's quarterback. Peyton Bender can spin it. This is a guy who went to junior college after a couple of seasons at Washington State. That speaks to his pedigree because that's Mike Leach. However, Bender saw Luke Falk there, realized he wasn't going to see the field very much, and decided to transfer to junior college. If you're familiar with Last Chance University, you remember EMCC's back and forth affair against Itawamba College. Peyton Bender was the quarterback that day. Already this season, school records for the most yardage by a quarterback at Kansas in his first 3 games. He's been at and above 60%. Has a 400-yard game, has a 4-touchdown game, and he's going to have a good receiver. Steven Sims, if you may remember him from last year, 9 receptions, 124 yards against West Virginia. This will be a really good passing test for the defense, which really didn't get much last week in the line of Delaware State's offense. Remember, Delaware State played an extra offensive lineman, just tried to block and keep its quarterback upright and do what it could to survive and advance in that game. Finally, let's have a conversation about special teams. Always fun, right? Last year, Kansas's was an adventure. You'll remember a punter punted, except it was the kicker, and that punt from the 50 went to the 27-yard line. Shelton Gibson had a 51-yard kickoff return, and then a 30-yard kickoff return aided by a face mask penalty. A Kansas kickoff went out of bounds. Wise actually got ejected from the game defending an extra point. How does that happen? Well, you probably know by now that Kansas' special teams are coached by Joe DeForest. One of the many reasons that Joe DeForest was not retained at West Virginia was because the special teams play was far from spectacular when he was the coordinator. Now he's at Kansas, and West Virginia has kind of refined and refocused what it does with special teams. Every assistant has their hand in something, and we've seen some progress. Kickoff return is a lot better with Marcus Sims in the game. He's also been a competent punt returner. We'll see how they can handle things with special teams in regard to field position, which could be important, but also field goals. A different game on the road. Sometimes you want to get points instead of having to flip the field and give the defense a chance to stop you on 4th down and handle momentum to the offense. So will there be times where Dana Holgorsen trusts Mike Molina from 42, 45 yards, or would he rather go for it on 4th and 5 and see what happens? Little things that sometimes are big in road games, this being the first true road contest season of the West Virginia. We have questions, we don't have answers, but not for long. That's it for this time. I will see you next time for 24/7 Sports. I'm Mike Casazza.